Today's episode is brought to you by Skillshare. As Beatles fans, we're living in an incredible age where pretty much everything they ever recorded is available as an official release or on a bootleg. However, we know there are completed songs that remain unheard by most everyone save for a select few, and one of these songs, arguably the most sought after and well known, is Carnival of Light. It not only features all four Beatles performing at the same time, but it predates the avant-garde songmaking of Revolution 9 by almost 18 months. On today's episode of Strange and Unusual Tales, we're going to dive into the history of the song and try to understand why we still haven't heard it.
Are there any unreleased Beatles recordings that you know?
Deep fans keep requesting. There's a thing called Carnival of Light, but it's very far out.
So here's what we know. At some point in December of 1966, the pop art design group of Binder, Edwards, and Vaughan painted and delivered a psychedelic piano for Paul McCartney. Upon receipt, they asked Paul to contribute a song for their upcoming light show in London. Surprisingly, Paul accepted, and during a recording session for Penny Lane on the evening of January 5th, 1967, he asked the band to indulge him for a bit. Paul instructed them to wander around the studio and make sounds, basically do whatever came to them in the moment. What followed was a 13-minute and 48-second descent into cacophony, the longest uninterrupted Beatles recording session up to that point in time. As described by Paul's friend, biographer Barry Miles, the song lacks any discernible rhythm, melody, or lyrics. It's serious in tone with abstract and fragmented moments of identifiable instruments such as piano, drums, organ, and guitar. It seems they recorded the instruments at a faster speed so that on playback they sound drawn out, distorted, and unusual. At one point, Paul plays a piano riff that would evolve into the song Fixing a Hole. John and Paul can be heard yelling or saying random words with their vocals drenched in reverb. Miles said it sounded most similar to the song Return of the Son of Monster Magnet off the album Freak Out. Paul likens it to a mix between composers John Cage and Karlheinz Stockhausen. According to Beatle historian Mark Lewisohn, who also got the chance to hear the recording, said the song consists of 4 tracks, the initial Freak Out session and then several overdubs layered on top. The song ends with McCartney asking, "Can we hear it back now?" still drenched in reverb. Engineer Geoff Emerick said that producer George Martin was less than impressed with the final product and was eager to move on to something more productive. A rough mix was then made and delivered to Binder, Edwards, and Vaughan. At this time, the group was gaining a lot of recognition around London and even internationally with their distinctive art style gracing furniture, buildings, and even cars, including Tara Brown's AC Cobra and the Beatles' Bentley. They were one of the leading members of the pop art movement in the late 60s, and so a light show was a natural extension for them. Carnival of Light premiered at the Million Volt Light and Sound Rave at London's Roundhouse, either on the 26th or the 28th of January 1967. I found 2 different dates on 2 different posters, so I'm not sure which is correct. However, we do know it was a showcase of light and film projection with experimental music and film. Utilizing the unique round shape of the event space, they covered all the walls with white sheets and used 12 to 16 still film and liquid projectors, with some that would change with the music. An encore performance was held the following week on either February 4th or 8th. Again, I found conflicting dates. At both shows, Carnival Light was played several times throughout the evening, but none of the Beatles attended either show. Of the people who were there, though, recalled that the piece was rather unmemorable. Event promoter David Vaughan was disappointed and thought the piece was terrible. David Allen of Soft Machine and Gong remembers only that it was played at the rave, but for Paul's part, he seems to be proud of Carnival of Light, as he stated in a 2002 interview. Over the years, Paul has tried to get it released. The first time we know of was in 1996 when he advocated for its inclusion on the Anthology 2 collection, but was voted down by George Harrison. And according to Mark Lewisohn, possibly even Ringo and Yoko didn't want it released. A few years later in 2002, Paul said he wanted to use it as a soundtrack to a Beatles photo slideshow video similar to what he did with Lennon McCartney's photos of the Grateful Dead, but this project failed to materialize. Then in a 2008 BBC interview, Paul confirmed that he still had the master tape of Carnival of Light and expressed interest in its release as it would prove that he was always the most musically adventurous of all the Beatles. However, again, the track wasn't released. But almost 10 years later, we had a glimmer of hope with the deluxe 50th anniversary edition of Sgt. Pepper's. There was talk that it might be included among the 33 bonus session tracks, but it would not come to be. Producer Giles Martin said it was considered at one point, but ultimately it didn't feel like it was part of Sgt. Pepper's. He did say he hoped to do something with it in the future. And that brings us to the recording of this video, and we still haven't heard it. A simple search online will give you a dozen or so videos claiming to be the song, but as many have pointed out, if these were real, Beatles lawyers would have taken them down in an instant. As of now, I see two possibilities why it still hasn't seen a public release yet. One is that it's so unlike anything else by the Beatles that it doesn't mesh with any of their other songs, and thus no one knows what to do with it. Or it could be that it's so amateurish that it's better left unheard. Mark Lewisohn speculated that it was only going to paint Paul in a good light, and since everything released by the Beatles has to be voted unanimously by Paul, Ringo, Yoko, and Olivia, they can't agree on its release. Or it could really just be a combination of the two. Ultimately, though, with the trend of what's coming out of the vaults for the 50th anniversaries of Sgt. Pepper's, the White Album, and Abbey Road, I'm confident we'll be able to hear it at some point, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. And I'm being realistic here. I'm not expecting it to be some avant-garde masterpiece or some hidden gem of the Beatles, but I believe it's an important piece of experimental music that led the Beatles to such songs as A Day in a Life and Revolution 9. And I think in that sense, we as Beatles fans should have the opportunity to hear it. And besides, how bad could it really be? It is, after all, still the Beatles. Now, if you want to learn more about music history, and I mean music history, I highly recommend checking out some videos over on Skillshare. It's an online learning community that offers classes on a wide range of subjects, including music, art, design, business, investing, and productivity. I found Jason Allen's Complete History of Music, parts 1, 2, and 3, very educational and thorough. He starts in the Antiquity and Medieval periods before moving on to the Renaissance, and his latest class is on the early Baroque. He has a PhD in music composition and teaches at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota. And navigating the class is super easy, with each lesson broken down into chapters along the side, allowing me to go back to a certain section with ease. Right now, get unlimited access to this class and thousands more for less than $10 a month with an annual membership, and even better, the first 1,000 people to use the link in the description will get a 2-month free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. So have fun and explore your creativity. Alright everybody, that will do it for today, but before I go, I want to leave you with one question. How should Carnival of Light be released? As a single, an EP, as part of a video slideshow? Let me know your thoughts below, and until then, I want to thank you all so much for watching. I'm your Vinyl Geek, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Hey everyone, thanks again for watching this video. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to check out my episode on the Paul is Dead conspiracy theory or any of my other Beatles related content.